Comrades, fighters, and the people of South Africa, our nation finds itself in the middle of a war in the Democratic Republic of Congo without a clear explanation as to why. As the EFF, we commend our courageous soldiers who fought bravely and placed their lives on the line in order that they must ensure there is peace and stability in the DRC. Our soldiers are disciplined and could never question those orders, and they have followed these orders with discipline. There can be no doubt that those soldiers who have passed on sacrificed their lives and deserve to be recognized and honored. However, at the heart of the conflict in the Congo is not a desire for peace, but the greed of the West for the minerals wealth of Congo. The DRC is a home of vast reserves of minerals essential for modern technology, including cobalt and tin, titanium and gold. Around 70% of the world cobalt, crucial for electric cars, batteries, and smartphones, comes from DRC, yet Congolese people see none of these riches. Instead, multinational corporations and West nations exploit these resources while fueling conflict to maintain their access. Over 200 companies from the UK and Belgium are involved in the purchasing minerals from the DRC, and these nations directly finance armed groups and perpetuate violence. These corporations and their governments remain complicit, failing to regulate supply chain or hold corporations accountable for using conflict minerals. The chaos in the DRC goes back to the colonial conquest, and today is sustained by imperialist interest to loot the wealth of the DRC. This conflict is equally fueled by ethnic divisions in the region. Comrades, it is here where the influence of Rwanda in the DRC emerges. As ethnic group that fled from Rwanda during the Rwandan genocide and settled in the eastern Congo are used as the basis for Rwanda support for M23 rebel against the regime in the DRC, while Rwanda is simultaneously a proxy of Western interests in the Congo. The conflict in the DRC, therefore, does not require a head of state who suffers from a desire to be a hero at the expense of the lives of our soldiers without an appreciation of the condition that informs the conflict. It is when you do not appreciate the condition that inform the conflict in the DRC that you will speak in folk tongues when you speak to the president of Rwanda and communicate a different message to the people of South Africa. Lies have short legs, Mr. President, and we demand clarity from you because you have sent our soldiers to their death and then antagonized forces in their region, knowing very well you are not prepared for war. It is crucial for fellow fighters to acknowledge this history and ask ourselves what is the specific role of the South African National Defense Force in the Congo, and in whose interest is our mission in the Congo? Whose peace and stability are we pursuing in the Congo? Is peace and stability for the continent or peace and stability for mining interests of global capitalists? Commissars and fighters, citizens of our great country and our armed forces who are in the trenches in the Congo, I take this opportunity to caution the President of South Africa, Sir Ramaphose, not to fall into the pitfalls of warmongering and not allow desperation to inspire a misguided intervention in the conflict in the Democratic Republic of Congo. For centuries, when a nation is confronted by massive social and economic challenges such as poverty, starvation, homelessness, and unemployment, war has been a weapon of the ruling elite to mobilize patriotism. Those who have over the years in modern society lost of the popular mandate of the people have embarked on senseless wars, sacrificing soldiers in an attempt to unite the nation behind one common purpose and one common cause. The President of South Africa ought to be careful to not allow fanatics to incite him into war, simply because it will give the people who have lost hope in him a common enemy to unite against. The dignity and pride of our army is not harmed because our African counterparts do not respect us. It is harmed because we have interfered in a conflict we do not understand and send our soldiers to fight rebels who are more equipped than us. We are being humiliated in DRC and threatened with war by President of Rwanda because our role of peace in the DRC is questionable, because there is no peace that has ever been achieved through the deployment of soldiers. The South African National Defence Force is not in DRC to pursue peace, but we are participating in the decade-old conflict to secure the mineral interest of the capital elite in the Congo. Our soldiers must withdraw from the DRC, not only because they have not been given the necessary equipment to pursue the so-called peace they are there for, but because the motivation to send our forces to the DRC are dishonest. Our children, our sons and daughters of the South African National Defence Force have been sent to their death because the mineral interest of multinational corporations and individuals must be secured. Our soldiers have been sent to be glorified bodyguards of the mines in the DRC, and this mission has been disguised as a pursuit of peace and a defense of democracy. Bring our soldiers home, because our army should not be a pawn in a game of capitalists which has now exposed the weakness of our military capacity. Bring them home, because every day they pass away, we see the consequences of a deliberate destruction of our arms manufacturer Dinel, and we see the consequence of the year-on-year budget cuts to the Defense Department. Bring our soldiers home, because they are the first line of defense for our people, not the first line of defense for the interest of capitalists and mining corporates. Mr. President, bring our soldiers home and desist from meddling in the affairs of DRC and Rwanda as if you are the USA of Africa, because we do not know if you'll be able to defend us when the rest of Africa turns their guns to the south. The manner in which the former liberation movement has collapsed our military and defense capacity is the embarrassment we must talk about. Mr. President and people of South Africa, to rescue the lives of our soldiers from a war they are not prepared for is not an embarrassment. It is a strategic and necessary retreat that prioritizes life over profits. Cyril Ramaphosa, I appeal to you and your conscience. Bring our soldiers home. Even if you threaten to fight a war against Rwanda, we don't have the military capacity to can fight any other country. Our army has collapsed because you have taken money away from them and put it under your mattresses. Today, our soldiers do not have food, do not have ammunition, do not have sophisticated equipment. We are not scared to fight, but at the moment, we are not ready and capable to fight. The best thing is to retreat. Commissars and fighters, let us make use of the time we have at this plenum to resolve on critical questions and map the way forward for our organization. The EFF must demand data, subsidies for vulnerable people, and push legislative mechanism to introduce Wi-Fi infrastructure at clinics, libraries, and bus stations. The EFF must demand an end to austerity that compromises the health system efficiency and must demand sufficient funding for health care. The EFF must advocate for the establishment of a pharmaceutical industrial zone on state land, including establishment of a state-owned pharmaceutical company with investors required to collaborate with the state-owned pharmaceutical company to supply affordable medicine and equipment to public health healthcare facilities. The EFF must demand a national public health response to drugs and substance abuse, including state-funded rehabilitation centers and harm reduction programs. The EFF must ensure the finalization of the South African Reserve Bank Amendment Bill to nationalize the central bank. The EFF must introduce student debt cancellation legislation in Parliament to ensure that all student debt is cancelled and no student enters the job market already indebted. This plenum must resolve on the operational mechanism to execute these key resolutions amongst many others as it relates to basic education, sports and culture, governance, justice, peace and security, state capacity, progressive internationalism, and state capacity. These mechanisms must include guidelines, particularly when it relates to the establishment of regional structures and EFF Youth Command. Fellow fighters, the situation in South Africa under the ANC-DA coalition government has not improved and has in fact entrenched massive corruption and policy uncertainty. It has become increasingly clear that the unity of convenience with right-wing forces and capital by the former liberation movement will result in permanent contradictions and dilute the pursuit of social change and alleviation of poverty and unemployment. The coalition partners are in a permanent state of conflict on ideological questions and implementation of otherwise progressive legislation, because the intention of domestic and global capital was to ensure that progressive policies are not implemented by partnering the former liberation movement with racist and capitalist political parties. It has become increasingly clear that the marriage of convenience that today governs South Africa was established to ensure that the EFF is kept out of power at all costs, despite confusion that will arise out of a marriage between the right-wingers and a former liberation movement. The Bella Act has been fully signed into law, and the EFF will ensure that this progressive legislation is implemented without compromises or delay. Expropriation Act, although remains a cosmetic measure to address the land question and does not fully address the question of the need of expropriation of land without compensation, and the question of custodianship must be defended from the outrage of racists who oppose even slight steps to return the land to the rightful owners. The EFF has been consistent in pointing out the shortcomings of the National Health Insurance Bill, as it does not have a verifiable plan to address the collapse of public health care and funding to public health care institutions. However, the NHI is a legislation that has passed through National Assembly and National Council of Provinces in Parliament. As a result, we must defend the principle of law-making processes as enshrined in the Constitution, because the so-called GNU does not have the power to reverse or review the bills which have already passed in Parliament. Any organization that sits in the GNU and wants to utilize that platform to undermine the law-making process of Parliament, which defeated them, must be called out as constitutional delinquents who do not respect democracy. Democracy remains democracy even when it does not favor you, and we must defend this principle at all costs. Commissars and fighters, despite the heavily funded and orchestrated political alliance to portray the EFF as an organization that will collapse governance and the economy of South Africa, the EFF has been at the center of stable and functional governments in local government municipalities. The municipalities where the EFF governs are defined by stability and service delivery, while the so-called government of national unity has been defined by corruption scandal, policy uncertainty, disputes and increases in unemployment through retrenchment in key industries. In the city of Tshwane, the EFF MMCs have been working tirelessly to ensure that the city is clean and that there is a provision of clean drinking water. And over the past month, for the first time, the people of Hammanskraal had clean drinking water. The city of Tshwane is the best example that the removal of the racist DA from government does not mean that governance will collapse, because service delivery has thrived in Tshwane since the DA was removed and replaced by the government of the EFF. In the city of Johannesburg, public safety and visibility is at its best level. And although other departments are failing in their responsibility, such as cleaning up our streets or fixing our roads, providing adequate electricity and water supply, where the EFF is deployed in the executive of Johannesburg municipality, we deliver services. The same goes for EFF Ekurhuleni and Nelson Mandela Bay, where provision of water and fixing of infrastructure is on track in Ekurhuleni, while in Nelson Mandela, the indigents such as old age homes are receiving cancellation to their debt to the municipality because of the EFF. There is a much more work that can be done in this year of the picket lines. Our MMCs must perform to the highest level, and they will receive regular performance reviews.